In our system, the end of the ray of creation, the growing end, so to speak, of the branch is the moon. The energy for the growth, that is, for the development of the moon and for the formation of new shoots, goes to the moon from the earth, where it is created by the joint action of the sun, of all the other planets of the solar system, and of the earth itself. This energy is collected and preserved in a large accumulator situated on the earth's surface. This accumulator is organic life on earth. Organic life on earth feeds the moon. Everything living on the earth, people, animals, plants, is food for the moon. The moon is a huge living being feeding upon all that lives and grows on the earth. The moon could not exist without organic life on earth, any more than organic life on earth could exist without the moon. Moreover, in relation to organic life, the moon is a huge electromagnetic. If the action of the electromagnet were suddenly to stop, organic life would crumble to nothing. The process of the growth and the warming of the moon is connected with life and death on the earth. Everything living sets free at its death a certain amount of the energy that has animated it. This energy, or the souls of everything living, plants, animal, people, is attracted to the moon as though by a huge electromagnet, and brings to it the warmth and the life upon which its growth depends. That is the growth of the ray of creation. In the economy of the universe, nothing is lost, and a certain energy, having finished its work on one plane, goes to another. The souls that go to the moon, possessing perhaps even a certain amount of consciousness and memory, find themselves there under 96 laws, in the conditions of mineral life, or to put it differently, in conditions from which there is no escape apart from a general evolution in immeasurably long planetary cycles. The moon is at the extremity, at the end of the world. It is the outer darkness of the Christian doctrine, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The influence of the moon upon everything living manifests itself in all that happens on the earth. The moon is the chief, or rather the nearest, the immediate motive force of all that takes place in organic life on the earth. All movements, actions and manifestations of people, animals and plants depend upon the moon and are controlled by the moon. The sensitive film of organic life which covers the earthly globe is entirely dependent upon the influence of the huge electromagnet that is sucking out its vitality. Man, like every other living being, cannot, in the ordinary conditions of life, tear himself free from the moon. All his movements, and consequently all his actions, are controlled by the moon. If he kills another man, the moon does it. If he sacrifices himself for others, the moon does that also. All evil deeds, all crimes, all self-sacrificing actions, all heroic exploits, as well as all the actions of ordinary everyday life, are controlled by the moon. The liberation which comes with the growth of mental powers and faculties in liberation from the moon, the mechanical part of our life, depends upon the moon, is subject to the moon. If we develop in ourselves consciousness and will, and subject our mechanical life and all our mechanical manifestations to them, we shall escape from the power of the moon.
When I was, I do this more in detail in the book, but I'm trying to connect dots here. What I came across when I was putting all this together, again, was something I've termed the moon matrix. The first section today is absolutely crucial to understanding how this can work. The moon matrix is a broadcast frequency coming from the moon, which has in effect hacked in to the human body computer and to the virtual reality universe in general, and has created a sub-reality within the wider virtual reality. Because, I keep saying it, but it's important, we see the moon as physical, but actually its base construct, like everything else in this reality, is waveform information. And I would say, and of course, I think this is going to become more obvious as the years pass. I would say the moon is actually not just what we've talked about so far, but it's an interdimensional portal through which entities and energies can come out of one reality through into this one. It's their means of entry. Its position, so perfect, as you'll see if you read not just my new book, but Who Built the Moon. Its position in relation to the moon and the sun is so perfect because that has an effect on creating this sub-reality. I'm saying that this frequency is broadcast from the moon and has created a sub-reality which we are constantly decoding, and that the genetic manipulation of humanity, so widely described by the ancients, was to take this body computer and tune it in, connect it to this frequency range I'm calling the moon matrix. This is Neil Haig's concept of moonopoly. This is the world, the structure that we are experiencing. This box recurring round and round limited world. And I am suggesting that we are being massively influenced. In fact, we have been turned into a hive mind by these broadcasts, which are holding us in a sense of limitation, to the point where it operates as a default mechanism. Soon as you start to awaken, if you don't keep it going and stick with it, then you'll default back, because the pressure of this moon matrix is pushing us into this tiny sense of limitation. So what virtual realities do is they basically hijack the five senses and get them to decode the information in the computer game and take it into reality. I'm saying that this moon matrix has done exactly the same, and it is part of the modus operandi of how planets are taken over in this way. Our five senses have been locked into something else, and we're decoding a fake reality. Basically, we are connected to this symbolically, which is a hive mind, which is why we are so herd-like when we weren't before. And if people are going, "Whoa, okay, what?" Just stick with me, because the layers will go on. What I've been talking about today is the fact that this base vibration from the black holes goes through this cycle, and it elicits different information in the form of photons from the suns, which we decode, and the reality changes. We go through different epochs. What I'm saying is that this moon matrix has hacked in to that photon energy stream and has done what the Chinese authorities have done to the computer system in China. They have stopped us accessing vast amounts of the virtual reality universe that we used to before. Now, if anyone thinks this is fantastic, that we could see things that aren't really there and not see things that aren't there, this is a New Scientist. America has just switched from analog to digital television. In the short time of about a year that the analog frequencies are not being accessed because they're going to be filled up by other things like mobile phones, suddenly, for the first time, scientists can see and connect with radio waves from galaxies they couldn't before. Why couldn't they do it before? Because we were watching the flipping telly. Prior to the switchover in America, naturally occurring radio waves at frequencies between 700 and 800 megahertz were obscured by analog TV signals, preventing astronomers from investigating the universe using this band. The freeing up of this bandwidth is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see galaxies in this range. Now, you imagine what is capable by this high technology in blocking frequencies so we can't perceive what's there and we perceive things that aren't there. That's what this is doing, I suggest. And I'll add more detail as we go along. In effect, we're operating within a bubble, a virtual reality bubble, within the wider virtual reality universe. And it's connecting in through our crystalline receiver transmission system, same with the Earth, and creating this situation where we are decoding a world that may even not be there, who knows, but certainly is different to the world we think it is. And we go back to this more accurately now. The matrix, I would say the moon matrix, is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now in this very room, you can see it when you look out of your window and you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? You are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison. You cannot smell, taste, or touch. A prison for your mind. I would say that prison for your mind is the moon matrix, which has put us in a vibrational prison that we can only break out of by becoming conscious and therefore vibrating beyond the walls of the moon matrix, which is a frequency range. And if we're not held in that frequency range, that's why society is structured as it is, with its stress and its fear and its war and its conflict, then we start to break out of its perception prison and we start to say, bloody hell, why didn't I see this before? Because you were there, constantly decoding this thing. Now, like I was just saying, never mind what I've just said about some moon matrix, never mind that. Even by its very position, the moon is fundamentally affecting human behavior and human perception. Because the moon is affecting the Earth tilt, the Earth spin, affecting the Earth oceans, therefore it's affecting us. We're 60-70% water, we must be affected by it. And also, and here we come back to the importance of the first section today, it's also fundamentally affecting the endocrine system, which connects us to the chakra system, which connects us to out there, part of which is the third eye. It affects the hormones that we secrete, which fundamentally affect human behavior, human health, human perception. Not with any matrix, just by being there. And it fundamentally affects this, the pituitary and the pineal gland that give us the sixth sense ability to see beyond the five senses. And what it has done, it has shut down, in so many people, on purpose, the third eye, which in our previous pre-domination mode, we used to perceive vast areas of reality beyond which we can now. Moonth comes from moon. The moon, of course, as it goes around, fundamentally affects our perception of time. We have moonths because of the moon. It's a monarchy. It's a hybrid monarchy. And one of the major ways they control us, seems to be a modus operandi again, is money, controlled by the Rothschilds. Now, I saw a film some years ago called They Live. It was a B-movie, and it was not just produced and directed. He wrote the music, every bloody thing, by a guy called John Carpenter. You follow John Carpenter's movie-making history, and you will see that he bloody knows a great deal. He'll say he doesn't, he bloody knows a great deal. He does movies and horrors and Satanism and all this stuff, and he did this movie called They Live, and I thought it was very symbolically accurate when I first saw it, but now it's unbelievably accurate. For those who haven't seen it, you go on YouTube, put John Carpenter They Live in, you can see it in sections still today. The story was this. It was set in the future, but the future was about now, because it was a few years ago now. There was a massive economic depression, and this guy comes along with his tools on his back. He's walking around America trying to find a job in the building industry. He gets a short-term one at this building site. At the end of the day, one of the other builders said, do you have anywhere to stay? Because there's a massive economic depression. People are living in tent cities and corrugated iron makeshift villages on wasteland. Exactly what's happening in America now, incidentally. And he's now having nowhere to stay. So anyway, he goes back with him to stay at this corrugated iron tent little village thing on the wasteland. And he starts getting interested because there's things going on across the church, across the way, that seem very strange to him. And the village has mocked up some kind of television in a kind of Heath Robinson way. And when they're watching the television, suddenly it breaks out of the main channel, and there's just a man's face on the screen saying, they're here, they're controlling, you don't know, all that stuff. And then there's a police state raid on this village and on this church. And they bring the bulldozers in and the police and the helicopters, and they destroy the village. And this builder guy gets away, and he comes back and he goes snooping around the church, and he finds some cardboard boxes. And he grabs one and runs into a back passage behind buildings, and he opens the box wondering what's in it. And there's sunglasses. And he's disappointed. Sunglasses? What are these sunglasses in a church for? So he thinks, oh, I'll have one. He puts them in his pocket, throws the others away, walks off into the street. And that's where we pick him up. When he puts these sunglasses on, suddenly the world looks very, very different. It looks like this. He starts to realize that there are people that look human to his naked eye that are anything but human when he puts these sunglasses on. Not only that, where he's seeing adverts with his naked eye, drink Coca-Cola, holiday in Jamaica or whatever, what he can see with the glasses on is subliminal instructions: conform, stay asleep, consume, watch TV, submit, and all the rest of it. All on levels that he can't see. Other people who haven't got the glasses, they're interacting with various people, but he can see are not human. He looks at the president making a speech. He's not human when he looks at him through the glasses. Same with a number of people in law enforcement. Newsreaders were the same. And where it goes is that at the end of the movie, they realize that the reason that people cannot see without the glasses, what he can see, is because there is a frequency being transmitted from the top of a television tower, which is preventing the population seeing what they would normally see if that frequency wasn't being broadcast. And what they do is they break the broadcast frequency, they stop the dish working, and people are sitting in bars, and suddenly they can now see the guy next to them's not human. What a bloody laugh that would be, wouldn't it? And there's people out having sex and then realizing, hey, I didn't really come home with you. Tell you the funny thing, a lady in Canada told me this story happened to her. I spoke in Canada years ago now, and I met this lady. She was a power-dressing businesswoman, you know, very of this world. But she'd had this experience, and she was shaking when she told me the story. She said that she got this boyfriend who had a dark side, she said, that he knew about and he was trying to deal with. And they come home, and they go into the bedroom, and there was a shelf at top of her bed, and standing there was the book, The Biggest Secret, which for the first time I introduced this reptilian thing. He then goes crazy, she said, when he sees the book. And he got her to throw it away. Oh, what are you reading that rubbish for? And all that stuff. Mind you, he's not alone in that. And then they start having sex. And he's kind of on top of her. And she said, I had my hand on the bottom of his back. And suddenly he started getting very, very violent. And I started getting frightened. And she said, then my hand was pushed back. And she said, I looked over his shoulder. And my hand had been pushed back by a tail. He sprouted a tail. She said, I screamed, threw him off. And for a second or two in front of me, he was totally reptilian, and then morphed back to human and ran out of the house, never seen him again. But these bizarre stories that are bizarre to our reality, I've been told all over the world by people from all different walks of life, people in the Swiss banking system and all that stuff, all different kinds of people. So this frequency is that equivalent of that broadcast dish on the top of that TV tower, which was stopping those people in that movie seeing what they would normally see. Now, when we bring this down into the reptilian world, well, it gets interesting, because we live in a society that is an expression of the reptilian brain. This man, Carl Sagan, a cosmologist, very famous, he wrote a book called The Dragons of Eden, in which he was looking at the effect of reptilian genetics on human behavior. And he said, you cannot, in effect, understand human behavior without understanding the reptilian aspect of all this. And we come back to what I mentioned earlier. This part of the brain, known as the reptilian brain or the R complex to scientists, is so fundamental to human behavior, as I'll explain in a second. And I'm saying that this genetic manipulation that the ancients talk about all over the world by the serpent gods locked us in to the moon matrix through the reptilian brain, because it connects into the hive mind of the reptilian species in the moon. And this, like I say, fundamentally expresses itself as the world that we live in. And I'll come to that more in a second. Now, in the 60s, around that time, there's a guy called Carlos Castaneda who wrote books based on the teachings of a Central American shaman source called Don Juan Matus. Some people say Don Juan didn't exist. Some people say he did. whatever, the words that were put into his mouth are just absolutely extraordinarily accurate. And I read this quote coming up after I put this stuff together that I've been talking about. This is what Don Juan Matus said in these books. We have a predator that came from the depth of the cosmos and took over the rule of our lives. Human beings and are its prisoners. The predator is our lord and master. It has rendered us docile, helpless. If we want to protest, it suppresses our protest. If we want to act independently, it demands that we don't do so. Indeed, we are held prisoner. They took us over because we are food to them, and they squeeze us mercilessly because we are their sustenance. Just as we rear chickens in coops, the predators rear us in human coops, human eros. Therefore, their food is always available to them. Think for a moment and tell me how you would explain the contradictions between the intelligence of man the engineer and the stupidity of his systems of belief, or the stupidity of his contradictory behavior. Sorcerers believe that the predators have given us our systems of beliefs, our ideas of good and evil, our social mores. They are the ones who set up our dreams of success or failure. They have given us covetousness, greed, and cowardice. It is the predator who makes us complacent, routinary, and egomaniacal. In order to keep us obedient and meek and weak, the predators have engaged themselves in a stupendous maneuver. Stupendous, of course, from the point of view of a fighting strategist, a horrendous maneuver from the point of those who suffer it. They gave us their mind. The predator's mind is baroque, contradictory, morose, filled with the fear of being discovered any minute now. They gave us their mind. And that is how I suggest they've done it. We are connected if we operate within the hive reptilian brain mind. We are operating on a collective mind, which is pouring out this constant sense of anxiety, fear, worry, stress, because that keeps us within the confines of the frequency range of the moon matrix, i.e. attached to it, and it also elicits the emotional low vibrational energy on which they feed.